99.1 The Sports Animal Sports Talk with John and Vince. So we're joined by a friend of the show. You see him on ESPN as a college football and recruiting analyst, also on ACC Network and SiriusXM. The great Tom Luginbill joins us here for a preview of the national championship and to talk some Vols. Tom, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Vince. I'm doing good, man. We can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess.
It used to be when we talked to you, like you get past National Signing Day, like the old National Signing
Yeah.
Day, then you'd like go in a cave somewhere for, a certain period of time. Now it's the national championship that you do that, right?
Well, yeah, well, now it's the national championship, but it's actually kind of, I don't want to say gotten worse, but it's gotten more complicated because now you still have the first Wednesday in February, right?
Right.
And we're really starting to steer our coverage to just almost entirely devoting that time to the transfer portal signees
Hmm.
because the high school guys are done, right?
Right.
And so you come off of this 2 week period, we get to the first Wednesday in February, and that's when I think we'll really go through whatever television format we do. And we'll kind of focus more on the portal than anything else.
So your national championship, you'll be on the ACC network, right?
Yeah, I'll be there for pregame, halftime, and postgame. And then in a rare set of circumstances, I actually just get to stand on the sideline and watch the game for pure enjoyment. I don't get to
Wow.
just watch games.
All right. So note that if you're watching the game and you're looking for unique coverage of that national championship game, let's start there. And, everybody's been talking about Indiana's story. I want to, that's been amazing, as you know. I want to
Yeah.
get into some of the matchups and the X's and O's with you. So, from your perspective, everyone's been talking about, all right, Miami's D line, can they impact the game? Can they get to Mendoza, that matchup? Does it start there for you, or is there another one that you think is going to be really critical in this game?
Oh, no, it starts right there. I mean, obviously, you don't get to this point as these two teams without being dominant in the front on both sides of the ball, which they are. That's a common denominator. But the thing that's interesting is I see a lot of the same commentary, in my opinion, applied to this game that we saw in the Cotton Bowl with Miami and Ohio State. Because I had said going into that game, nobody had been able to get Ohio State quarterback Julian Sayin off schedule. They hadn't been able to fluster him. They hadn't been able to get him rattled, get him uncomfortable. They were so fluid on offense the entire year, and they protected him so well. And for a young quarterback, he had great weapons around him. And then all of a sudden on that day, Miami did. And it changed the game. In fact, I'm standing on the sideline for that game. I have never seen an Ohio State football team get their butt whipped as bad as they did on that day. And it started up front for Miami. And I think the same logic applies here, right? Who's been able to get Fernando Mendoza off schedule? Who's been
Mhm.
able to get him rattled? Who's been able to get him maybe second guessing, holding onto the ball for a beat when he normally wouldn't? He's not sure of what he's seeing. The question remains, can Miami do that? Because nobody's been able to do it. And what Fernando Mendoza does so well is he protects himself with timing, anticipation, and decisiveness. And then the other thing he does so well is he has uncommon accuracy when his targets are covered. Have you noticed whether it's downfield, whether it's to the sideline, he'll have targets and they're pretty well covered. And he'll put the ball in the only place his guy can make it. Somehow Miami has to be able to disrupt that. And there's no question. I think the flip side to that also starts in the trenches because what Miami has done on offense, and it's really kind of interesting because the core of the offense is an air raid style. It's a spread offense. But what Miami wants to do is bloody your nose. Like, if you're going to play against Miami up front, you better get a note from your mother because it's going to be one of those days. And if you look at the Texas A&M game, the Ohio State game, the Ole Miss game, when Miami gets you into the fourth quarter and they just wear you down. I mean, Mark Fletcher had 172 yards rushing against Texas A&M. 91 of them were in the fourth quarter. They got Ohio State in the fourth quarter, and they pummeled them with the ground game. Against Ole Miss, it was a blend of ground game early, and then it was ground game, big third down conversions. So that to me is the game within the game because Indiana up front is active and is explosive and as well coached as they are undersized. Their one defensive end's 262, the other one's 244. They got another one on the inside that's about 280. And then the little stump, Tyreek Tucker, their defensive tackle, he looks like a keg with arms. He's 6 foot, 300 pounds. So what Miami's going to want to do in this game is they're going to want to play this game in a phone booth. Put that Miami defense, or excuse me, that Indiana defensive front at the point of attack and see if they can hold up. Because if you shorten the game, if you're Miami and you can run the ball and you shorten the game, you limit those Indiana offensive possessions.
Tom Luginbill, ESPN, ACC Network, and SiriusXM joining us here for a preview of the national championship. We'll get to some Vols here in a moment as well. All right, what else could be an avenue, anything you haven't mentioned, Tom, that could be an avenue for Miami to win this game? Because Indiana's been absolutely execution machines, as you know, and they're just allergic to any sort of mistakes. They just never do anything wrong. What can Miami do you think, other than what you just broke down?
Well, there's two things. One's player related, and one is goes to what you said: execution, efficiency, not beating yourselves. I've never seen a team, and I mean, I'm 52 years old. I grew up the son of a college coach. I've been in the locker room since I could walk. I have never seen a team ever so well prepared and well coached that doesn't beat themselves the way Indiana does. You know, Indiana's only had 8 turnovers the entire season.
Yeah.
They've only had 1 lost fumble, and it came in the first game of the year. There's never been a team in 15 weeks in the history of FBS football that's ever done that. Right? They're the lowest penalized team. They don't have negative plays. They don't give up explosive plays. They're flawless in the kicking game. I think the one thing that Miami's done such a good job of is they haven't beaten themselves either in the playoff. But if that's how this thing's going to go, because what Indiana does, they wait for you to make a mistake and they pounce on it. And what Ole Miss was not capable of doing against Miami was taking advantage of the lost opportunities. I mean, Miami dropped 4 interceptions in that game. But Ole Miss couldn't take advantage of it. Indiana always takes advantage of your mistake. And so when it comes down to that, you're going to get really into the micro. Because of the efficiency of Fernando Mendoza, I think Carson Beck is going to have to be flawless. Now, they're not going to ask him to be 24 or 35 for 350 yards. That's not what he's been for them. They've run the football. They've been efficient in the passing game. But he's going to have to match Fernando Mendoza's efficiency. If Fernando Mendoza doesn't turn it over, Carson Beck cannot turn it over, right? If Fernando Mendoza doesn't take sacks, Carson Beck cannot take sacks. And so I'm looking to see how that goes tit for tat and see how that matches up. Secondly, and this one's more player related, it's been a little glossed over, but Miami has been really dinged up in the playoff in the defensive secondary. I mean, Damari Brown, O.J. Frederick, their 2 starting corners, haven't played for 3/4 of the 3 games they've played. And so they've had a really nice blend of depth and production, but they're going to need to get those 2 guys back, because what Indiana does best is make plays in the vertical passing game, whether it's Charlie Becker, who's big and tall, Elijah Surratt, he's big and tall, Omar Cooper is more their slot guy that's going to make some moves and get into space. But I think Miami needs to have their best personnel on the field to give them the best chance of matching up when that ball gets over the top, and not allowing, you heard me mention earlier, the uncommon accuracy of Mendoza. Even when a guy's covered, he isn't really covered. And somehow Miami's going to have to make some plays on the deep ball.
Man, great points. And on the receivers being covered, I mean, he's back shoulder Mendoza.
Oh,
that should be his middle
it's
name.
Unbelievable. Like, he's one of those guys where if a guy is draped over a target, he'll put the ball right here. But if he puts it right here, it's batted away. And we're talking about a difference of 6 inches. I mean, that's how unbelievably consistent his accuracy has been, and it's been flawless.
Yeah, I think I heard that Indiana receivers have like 8 drops the entire season, which is
it's like you said, they don't do anything wrong with it. I've never seen a team not beat themselves the way this team does. It's unbelievable. And I think sometimes that glosses over the fact that they are really talented. Mm-hmm. They are talented, and because they don't, I think people sit there and say, okay, well, they don't beat themselves, so that's how they make up for a lack of talent. But here's the X factor in that. Have you looked at their 2 deep? They are old. Like, they got guys collecting Social Security, right? You got graduate seniors, redshirt juniors across the board in almost every position, and almost 2 deep across the board. And it's hard to be old in college football right now, right? Because of the transfer portal. It's hard to maintain and retain. And what Indiana's done such a good job of is not only targeting players that were older and experienced, but Kurt Cignetti put a premium on performance and production.
Yeah.
He didn't care about a guy in the transfer portal that was a high profile 5-star that jumped into the portal. Okay, well, that's great, but that guy hasn't played.
Yep.
So he's going to sit there and go, okay, well, I'm going to look at the quarterback and the wideout and the defensive lineman and the linebacker and the corner. And I'm going to get a guy that started 33 games. I'm going to get a guy that started 25 games. And it's all over their roster. I think that gives them a huge advantage.
Tom Luginbill, great stuff. Break down the national championship game tonight, Indiana and Miami. Let's talk about the Tennessee Vols. You mentioned the transfer portal. It's such a big deal. As you can imagine, the quarterback position has been one that has been discussed the most by Vols fans. A lot of angst because Tennessee does not have a quarterback in the portal. They've been in the mix for some of those big names, as you know. They only have 2 scholarship quarterbacks, and George McIntyre had 2 games played and 9 passes, and then incoming 5-star quarterback Faison Brandon, a true freshman. That's it. So how do you approach this now that the portal is officially closed and I guess the paperwork can still go in next week, early next week? But how does Tennessee approach this right now?
Well, number one, I think that they've resigned themselves to the fact that there's going to be some bumps in the road because they're going to have to play with a younger, more inexperienced guy. I think they'll still bring a guy out of the portal that will fulfill a depth need, but maybe not a guy that you sit there and say is going to push to be the guy. I think that train's left the station, so they're going to be younger. Excuse me. And I think you're going to have to expect now Faison Brandon to be in the mix, to have some type of role. And so, Tennessee fans may not want to hear that because they're seeing, guys like Byron Brown and Rocco Becht and Josh Hoover and a variety of other guys that have played a ton of football that have all gone to other places, right? I'm sure they would have loved to have got one of those guys. But what it looks like to me is that the high school ranks, they invested on offense. And the transfer portal ranks, they invested on defense. And so I think they're kind of feeling like, all right, well, that's going to have to be our blend. And we might have to deal with some bumps in the road, but we might have to also hope that a guy like Tristan Keys or Tyreek King come in and have a Malachi Toney type of year, right? You're going to now have to expect these young players to play early and produce. But that's also one of the ways you build a roster and maintain retention. Because one of the things that happens in the portal is you sign high school classes. Well, if you don't engage those guys in the first year or two, guess what? They pick up their ball and they go home. Yeah. So the silver lining there is that Tennessee might be throwing a lot of guys to the wolves and be playing a lot of freshmen that 2 years from now, right, if they've invested in them and they can re-sign them and things of that nature, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like what Miami's done. Like Miami's done a really good job of blending transfer portal additions and development of high school players. Mark Fletcher is a high school signee, Malachi Toney, Ruben Bain, O.J. Frederick. I mean, a lot of their top tier players were not portal guys. They developed them and brought them up. So they've had a nice blend there. The difference is, and this is, again, going back to the quarterback position, in the, if you take a look at the example of Indiana and Miami, both of those teams for 2 years in a row have hit on a portal quarterback. And if all indications are true, they're going to hit on another one in Miami with Darian Mensah. So, if you're Tennessee, you either have faith that George McIntyre is ready, or you're going to find out that maybe he's not quite as far along as you thought, and now you're going to need the freshman to come in and be a true competitor. So I think that's a little bit concerning, but I think the additions through the high school ranks positionally and through the transfer portal have been really strong.
Yeah, and Tom, I would say this, the tough thing for Tennessee is there is 0 proven wide receivers in their first year to make an impact under Josh Heupel at Tennessee. It always takes that second year. Now, they get there oftentimes, but that first year is tough. Maybe one of these guys are different, but they have not been able to find that sauce. I don't know if it's the options, the reads that the receivers have, just the offense or whatever. Those first year guys have not jumped in yet.
Yeah, it's not talent. It's the maturity aspect. It's the football knowledge aspect. How much can they handle? Because remember, you're taking a high school kid that for his entire career has been the go-to wide receiver number one, get the ball into his hands, not asking him to do much else. Now, all of a sudden, he goes away from home for the first time. He's getting integrated on campus, acclimated academically, socially. All of a sudden, the uptick in competition has dramatically risen. He can get overloaded, right? Now you're asking that guy to make decisions on the move with route structure and zone concepts and where do I sit and do I continue to drive? All of these different things. It's hard, man. And I think it just takes a special guy upstairs
Mm-hmm.
to be able to handle that. But you're right. It's hard to do it with multiple guys, let alone one.
All right, last couple of things. Really appreciate your time. So you mentioned all the defensive emphasis in the portal for Tennessee. Tom Luginbill joining us here on Sports Talk. Chaz Coleman, one of the top guys in the portal. I think ESPN, you guys have him at number 11, and
Mm-hmm.
Amari Campbell was a starter. I mean, they got those 4 defenders from Penn State.
Yeah.
That's really the highlight of the portal at this point. Got an offensive tackle. Anything else jump out in terms of fit with Jim Knowles and that Penn State heavy assistant defensive staff also?
Yeah. So the one thing about Jim Knowles and that scheme, it's a safety driven scheme.
Yeah.
It's a down the middle scheme. Well, look at if you look at the portal, they've done some things at the safety position, also at the corner position, and they bring some guys over. Duane Lane is another one at safety who he's familiar with. He's coached. He understands him. He knows him. TJ Metcalf's another one. Guy he's coached, a guy he knows. When he arrived at Ohio State, Jim Knowles, he had the luxury of inheriting Caleb Downs, right?
Yeah.
And they had 2 legit safeties, and those guys basically run the show from the back end. So I think the familiarity there of guys he's coached that understand what he wants, how the defense is structured, to have those additions down the middle of the field is really key.
And then the 2026 class, obviously we talked about Faison Brandon, a number of those guys in all-star games. Anyone else that Tennessee fans should be kind of locked in on? You hit a few offensive skill guys. Anyone else in that 2026 class of signees that you really like that you think can make an impact for this team?
Yeah, I think Jordan Carter's a guy that is going to be a guy that can come in and contribute right away. He's already 245 pounds. Good point of attack guy, explosive first step off the edge. And, they've addressed the defensive front significantly, both through high school and through the transfer portal. But because they're getting younger as opposed to older, they're going to need those guys to contribute right away.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great call with the national championship game, and we'll talk to you hopefully again soon.
You bet, Vince. Thanks, man.
All right. That is the great Tom Luginbill, ESPN, ACC Network, SiriusXM here on Sports Talk with John and Vince, 99.1, the Sports Animal.